Okay, for those of you who have been following us on Periscope and Twitter, we're here live with Russell Stephenson. We're going to be talking to him today about his solo exhibition here at Mooney Galleries called Mindscape. So for the last couple of weeks, we've been leading up to educating our audience on contemporary art, things that are happening in the art world, things that have come on our radar, helping you kind of digest and helping you navigate through this confusing world called contemporary art. So we're here with Russell, and we'll be opening an exhibition this Saturday to open to the public from 4 to 8 p.m. here at 305 South Main in Boerne, Texas. But we want to take the opportunity for our followers to hear from Russell about what his inspirations are, what he finds, as his driving force to create this body of work that we'll be showcasing. He just got done with a podcast interview with our consultant, Catherine. So he's kind of primed and ready to talk about the art again. And so, for those of you that are watching, go ahead if you want. Go ahead and ask us some questions. We'll be monitoring that as well. So, Russell, we started talking about your new work here about 6 months ago in preparation to get a body of work together for Mooney Galleries. And about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, we did the second installment of your body of work here in the gallery. But this is kind of vastly different, not only from a curatorial point of view, but from a theoretical point of view. I think from our point of view, the idea was previous to, let's get a body of work together that's going to introduce you to the Hill Country clientele, the clients that are out here in Boerne, Texas, and out at the Fredericksburg, the Tapatio Springs area, the Cordillera Ranch. But now that we've kind of established you out here, this thought was, let's do a show of very solid new work that represents the direction that you're going. So maybe you could kind of talk a little bit about where you're at as far as your exploration of these mediums and these theories, and talk a little bit about how you see yourself progressing from this point.
All right. As an artist and as an instructor, I do my own studies and my own research in art history. I'm pretty well versed in the history of art from the primitive to the modern and even to the postmodern period which we're in. And exploring different translations of what people think art is throughout history certainly brings us to where we all are today. In my own personal history, which is much shallower than the world history, of course, I've always taken on this kind of experimental, exploratory aspect of my work in which I'm always trying to develop new things, discover new things, present new things, visually interpret new things in the work, to speak to different audiences as I grow in my work and as my work evolves and matures. And I hope that throughout looking at the evolution of my work, even over the past few years, has grown into a more concrete depiction of what it is that I'm trying to do in the work. Sometimes it takes on a very tranquil look and a very peaceful state, and sometimes it involves some sort of movement and turbulence and even aspects that may look like destructive forces of nature and so on. So being introduced to the Hill Country through the Boerne Gallery, J.R. Mooney, we tried to bridge the gap between some of the artwork that audiences were familiar with that takes on a very literal translation of things that you can see in representational art, the landscapes and the animals and the people and nature through that sense. What I've tried to do in that bridge is to bring some of my experience with contemporary abstraction and mix it with aspects of nature, which I'm also inspired by, and give sort of a personal translation of these places and of events the way that I see it. And through my own development of my own work, my own processes and techniques that can get quite complicated, I try to explore work that embodies something that people can respond to and connect with, but at the same time give insight into what happens in my own head and in my own studio that I also try to explore in a more experimental way.
In the podcast with Catherine, you're talking about your relationship being an educator and being a teacher and how that plays a role in your artwork, but also your mindset when you're in the studio and your mindset in the classroom. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's all very different because of the different hats that we have to wear on a daily basis. I'm a teacher, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an artist, and being able to navigate all through this world with these different hats, everything takes on its own kind of unique approach. The practices that I engage in my own personal work are sometimes very advanced and a lot more sophisticated than what I'm able to teach in the classroom because of the different levels that different artists are on. You can't, build a skyscraper by starting with the antenna that attaches to the roof. You have to start from the ground up and build a sound structure. And education, academics, is very much that sound structure that you have to begin with before you tailor off into your own world that you create with the level of execution that I think it requires these days in order for your ideas to be translated well, depending on what somebody is trying to do with their work. With what I'm trying to do with my work is to really carve out this kind of internal personal world that I can still speak a language to people that are based in representational imagery, but introduce them to a more stylized and crafted world that is unique to my own processes and insights.
Well, for those of you that are just tuning in, I know that we're having some followers popping in and out. We're here with Russell Stephenson. He's what we're having as our premier contemporary abstract painter for Mooney Galleries-Boerne. We're here talking to him live for have an interview session with his artwork for Mindscapes, which is this little exhibition here at the Boerne Gallery that opens up on Saturday from 4 to 8 p.m. We invite all the public to come out, so we're located at 305 South Main in Boerne, Texas. So that's about 25 minutes or so, 30 minutes north of San Antonio.
Depending on traffic.
Depending on traffic, yes. So hopefully Saturday when you all are getting into cars and driving up here, it'll be 20 minutes. So when those of you who are in San Antonio thinking, oh, Boerne's too far out, really not. That's really not.
It's a beautiful drive out here.
It is.
So take a Saturday.
I think that's why we want to talk about his work too. Is when you make the trip out to the hill country, there's so many different things that can catch your eye and things that you don't experience in the city, whether it be San Antonio or Houston. The idea that the sky plays a big role in your experience, the rolling hill country plays a big role in your experience of living out here and traveling out here. So one of the paintings that we actually have in the shot that we're doing this interview is the painting that we used for the invitation for Mindscapes. And it's based on a photograph from a supercell. So let's take an opportunity to talk about this piece called Corona. It's a 24 by 36 oil panel. And for me, it's really the signature piece of the exhibition. Although there's slight deviations in visual aesthetic and kind of cause and effect of Russell exploring his medium and pushing and pulling textures and surfaces. But for this painting, again, Corona is, for me, the spotlight piece of the exhibition. So let's take a moment to talk about that piece.
Okay, well, I grew up in West Texas, and I spent many formative years in the Panhandle. If you're familiar with the Panhandle of Texas, it's very flat and very featureless. And I believe that the final scene in Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, was filmed for one of the Panhandle spectacular sunsets. And so as they're riding off into the sunset, that's right outside of Amarillo. So with no definitive landscape features, we always looked to the sky. They have amazing skyscapes. We have amazing thunderstorms that roll through there that are quite spectacular. And throughout the last few years of drought that we've had in Texas, it's been really quiet. As of recently, we've had plenty of rain and plenty of these supercells that have kind of rolled through Texas that people have gotten photographs of. I have my own. And so that became something that I wanted to explore. The power of nature is certainly an influential part of my work, and from time to time I explore it, sometimes in a literal basis and a representational basis, and sometimes just simply as inspiration. Corona is a piece that began as the idea of this kind of supercell, but through the process of making the painting, it started to take on other characteristics that weren't just cloud formations and land and sky and ground relationships, but started to take on some new kind of insight that became, as an artist, an internal look at who I am, at who the creator of this work is. I didn't create the supercells, but I created the painting. And so through the process of painting this work, it started to take on this look and feel of a crown. And I thought about the divinity of light, the divinity of and the power of nature, and how those things influence people and affect all people. Because, of course, in comparison to some of the power of nature, I mean, as we have found even recently in the Hill Country, people are very powerless to the strength of nature, and we have a great respect for it. Corona came about because of this aspect of light, this aspect of something that is grander than we are. And in the development of this work, not just through the inspiration of supercells and the development of the way that it looked, I also, take a look around myself in the studio and the place that I'm at now and where I am as a human being and my own personal development in my work, the growth of my family, and all these kind of much more local things, and found myself realizing that the street that I live on is also called Corona. So it all kind of came together into this particular piece that all very much made sense for me at the time because of events that were happening in the region, what was happening in the studio, and my particular disposition and placement where I am nowadays.
Okay. One of the things that we talked about in your studio when we were looking at the work to bring to the gallery was the fact that you have 5 galleries in the state of Texas that represent your work. And in some cases, you're creating individual bodies of work for those 5 galleries, and that seemed to be a pressing issue as far as this kind of schizophrenic mentality of how do I get in the mindset of creating these grids, how do I get in the mindset of creating these abstracts, how do I get in the mindset of creating these Texas panoramics, because each gallery wants something different based on their clientele's needs. And I think now, as we've been talking over the last couple of months, you kind of narrowed your opinion about what you want to do, and how can you bring all these things together and kind of not be as schizophrenic and be calming in the studio to create works that you want to create.
Yeah, one of the paintings that's in the show, called The Majestic, has a metaphorical sense of what it's about. It has a very literal sense as to what it's about, with a geographical formation that's in the painting as well, based on mesas and southwestern landscape. But I was joking about it at one point because it also takes on this metaphorical split personality between light and darkness, and which is an age-old kind of thing that humanity has explored. I do that in the studio because I have so much experience in so many different mediums and so many different aspects of art and so many different experimentations that they all tend to take on different forms at times, depending on the season that I'm at in the studio. And so I have been working with different galleries that want to carry a unique aspect of a particular voice of my work that they want to carry. But it has narrowed lately because even some of the work that you have in the gallery here has a combination of different practices and different techniques that kind of build a more in-depth look into the art and me as an artist as a whole, rather than I do this and I do this and I do this. Some institutions want you to only do one kind of work so that they can market you and pigeonhole you into doing this particular kind of work. I have always gone against that grain. My undergraduate thesis show involved drawings and prints and a painting and a sculpture, even though I was a sculpture major. So they didn't really know what to do with me. Robert Rauschenberg's son actually sat in on my thesis committee and gave me some great insight and feedback, and he said, I really can't say anything about the work. It speaks for itself, simply. He was a wonderful gentleman to me. And then for my graduate thesis, they probably had the same kind of struggle with me because graduating as a print major, I had digital prints, I had monoprints, I had intaglio etchings, I had paintings that were taking on characteristics of both sculpture, printmaking, and painting techniques. And so I was developing this kind of hybrid of different aspects of my work and different techniques that were building work that was unique because of my experience in all of these different techniques that I was combining and trying to invent something new out of it. I'm always in that kind of experimental mentality as to what I want the work to look like, and I'm more complicated than simply trying to make one thing all the time,
Right.
which has been kind of complicated because then gallerists have a hard time being able to sell an artist's work because it's never just one thing. And so I've struggled with that in my own work and in my own studio as to what am I going to make today. Sometimes it's always a new thing. And I encourage experimentation in all my students. I encourage it in my daughter's work and my own work because we are inventors and we are explorers in that sense. And rather than consistently speaking with the same voice, my work comes out in many different languages. Those languages start to those visual languages start to kind of come together in different ways at different times. And what I would like personally to do as an artist is have all of those languages grow into singular pieces. Because my experience and my experimentation has been very complex. Certainly that comes out in some of the work that I create. And if I had it my way, I think the work would become larger and be kind of an all-inclusive type of work that is a little bit of this type of work and a little bit of this type of work, and eventually maybe I can just make work and it all embodies all the different languages that the work speaks.
Okay, for those of you that are watching it, we're doing a live kind of interview session with San Antonio artist Russell Stephenson in preparation for the weekend events here at the Galleries-Boerne for the opening of Mindscapes, which is a solo exhibition of Russell's new work for the gallery. We have, I believe, 8 paintings that will be shown, as well as some previous work leading into this body of work. So those of you that are watching us today, we want to kind of open it up also for discussion. Is there anything that you want to ask the artist, ask the gallery? We just got done talking about kind of his aspect of bringing together many voices and not really worrying about experimenting for his own personal purposes in the studio, and trying to walk that fine line of gallery representation versus experimentation versus saleability. So I know that some of the people that are watching the arts Periscope shows really want to hear about how to get into galleries, how to do gallery representation, how to get your artwork out there and sold. There are several artists that are constantly on Periscope, kind of behind the scenes from their own point of view in studios, and those that are talking to their clients and things. So we want to open it up. If there's anybody that wants to ask us a question or ask Russell a question, go ahead and feel free to do that. We're going to talk a little bit more about his older work too. I think we touched on it a bit, and the idea was, as Mooney Galleries has existed for 68 years, Russell's been one of the contemporary painters and artists that we brought in recently in the last couple of years. And we've used his work as a bridging aesthetic for our clients. So people that have bought from us in the past have bought very traditional work, very traditional landscapes, portraits, things that are in the impressionistic genre. But then here we bring in an artist that is working in today's times and exploring today's topics with today's experimental mentalities. And so we're trying to educate those clients that have been solidly buying traditional work and how this fits into their existing collection. So Russell is kind of that bridging of those two worlds. There's things in his paintings that we use to ground our experience in viewing his work, whether it be landscapes, whether it be horizon lines, whether it be cloud formations, whether it be clouds in the sky, whatever the case, we are drawn to it because we see that as something familiar, and then we start to digest the other abstract sensibilities within those paintings. So with Russell straddling those two worlds, he opens up a really good group of people, demographic of people that potentially be interested in his work. From a gallery point of view, that's a very good sales and marketing from our perspective. And those that are experimenting as purely abstraction, there's only collectors that deal with that. And so you kind of, like you said, you pigeonhole yourself into those mindsets, and we don't really want to do that with artists that we're trying to break into people's collections. And by establishing yourself in a certain genre of work, you can explore different avenues of that genre in many different ways. Sky's the limit. So it's something good to think about as you get in your studios every day, as you go to the galleries every day and museums and look at bodies of work, potentially to either buy for your own collection or just appreciate as you're out and about. So we're running about 25 minutes into this conversation now. I think for those of you that have been tuning in, if there's anything you want to ask us, we'll probably talk a little more about the older work, like I said, leading into this body of work, and then we'll see if anybody has any other questions. So when we first introduced Russell into Mooney Galleries, we brought in really solid bodies of work that were what we call Texas panoramics, and those were almost representational landscapes of various elements of the Texas topography, from Bastrop to Amarillo to Corpus Christi. And so based on what Russell does as far as taking photographs of certain geographical locations and things, he would draw inspirations from those and paint. But I think one of the things that really sticks out in my mind from that body of work was the Bastrop and the Bastrop fires. So if you could kind of talk about that experience of doing that body of work or those series of paintings.
Okay, well, I explored the Texas Panoramic Series. One, as a native Texan, this is my home, and I've lived all over this state and explored as much of it as I think I can, although this is a big state and I haven't been everywhere. But it's a very it's a very unique place in the world. San Antonio in particular is a very unique place in the world because everybody knows what the Alamo is, everybody knows what the shape of Texas is, the Texas flag. I mean, it's become kind of this micro-universe that is no stranger to the world as a whole. It's a very unique people, it's a very unique landscape in that we have a coastline, we have plains, we have forests, we have mountains, we have canyons, we have a little bit of everything And it's a very rugged landscape, and this country was developed out of a very rugged sensibility in our founding in the first place. And so with the history of that kind of ruggedness and conflict and that constant presence of what Texas is, I wanted to explore the state as a whole, geographically and metaphorically, to try and embody just a sense of that, a taste of that, through my own personal interpretation and experiences. The Bastrop fires was certainly a devastating aspect of that particular year, a few years ago. And coming back from Houston at one point, I remember driving through the smoke that was billowing out from Bastrop at the time, thinking that it was some kind of doomsday scenario because of the colors and the environment just took on this different form that was very ominous. That comes out in my work every now and then as well. The thunderstorms, of course, that we've talked about before, that can have a devastating effect that we've seen even most recently with the flooding and the rivers swelling and so on. Coming out of the drought has been nice, but it's also caused quite a bit of devastation and grief even here in Boerne. Right. So the power of nature has always kind of shaped and formed Texas. Big Bend National Park being carved out by the rivers, Polladera Canyon being carved out by the rivers. And so Texas is kind of this ever-evolving kind of idea. It's never just one thing. I mean, people like to pigeonhole Texas as well, right? We all ride horses to work, and we all have cowboy hats and drive trucks and talk funny. But Texas is certainly much more than that. And with this new kind of sensibility, new technologies, new development in industry, and this kind of new identity that Texas has taken on, from Austin to Houston to NASA to the old oil country and so on. As we grow and as Boerne grows, you have different people that have different tastes and different insights into what they like and know about artwork. And as a bridging sense, I mean, you had approached me about coming into the gallery a couple of years ago, and it's been kind of almost a little bit of an experiment with the gallery itself, as to see if Boerne's ready for contemporary abstraction. I think that all artwork is contemporary abstraction. I think that all artwork is abstraction in the production of it, in the little brushstrokes that every artist makes. Even if it turns out to be a representational look and feel to the painting that's very literal, such as animals and landscapes and so on, the creation of the painting itself has this kind of abstract language in how the image is built. The audience sees the finished product. When you go to the museums, you see the finished artwork, but you're never really a part of the developmental process of how the painting was made, which can be over several months, several years in some cases with some of these master paintings. All artists have their own unique voice and their own idea of what painting should look like and what their painting should look like. And that can be very conflicting, but ultimately I encourage all artists to kind of find and develop their own unique voice, no matter what it looks like. I have my own ideas of what I think paintings, my paintings, should look like, and even my own ideas behind the work that makes it what it is. In some cases, I know some fellow artists and friends that work in a very ethereal sense, a very abstract sense, that color and light and space is a very open, kind of ephemeral thing. In my work, I take some of those same ideas, but I try to make them into more of a physical thing. Light as a physical sense, clouds as a physical thing, instead of just a fleeting idea, metaphorically. And so bringing that kind of idea that have some of us draw from the same sources of inspiration, it just comes out in a different way and translates through different means. I think that, even the beginnings of any of my paintings, they all start out abstract. and through the developmental process of trying to find the image in the paint. Michelangelo put it that all of his sculptures were embedded in the stones. He just chipped away the pieces to reveal what it was. My developmental sensibilities are quite similar to where I consider myself a student of the painting, and through its developmental process, I discover what the painting is supposed to be as well. Some of it is pre-planned. There's certainly preliminary sketches and drawings that go into most of my work, but it's also a very intuitive process because it becomes a very personal interpretation from an artist's point of view as to how we engage with the world and what images we make from the world and what those look like. My graduate thesis was entitled Intuitionism, because beyond all the techniques and all the processes and all the things that we learn about what art has been and what it should be and whatever it is according to textbook, I think all artists need to really find that kind of inner voice and listen very carefully and follow their own intuition as to what it is that the art is supposed to look like. Because I think only then the true personality of the artist can be explored. And you see that throughout history, to where sometimes it takes on a very strange look, in a very unfamiliar way. But eventually it becomes about the artist as an individual and that personal voice that the artist is trying to create over time. And what I've done is very much along the same lines in my developmental processes, to try and reach and communicate with people in several different languages, visual languages. Sometimes it takes on a very kind of abstract sensibility where there's no sense of representation whatsoever. In some cases, I do respect the landscape and bring aspects of the landscape and nature into the work because of our relationship with nature. And so it all takes on a new form from day to day, from this body of work to this body of work. I think I'll be able to look back one day and look at my work as a sense of personal history and a personal timeline to see, where I've been and what it was that influenced me that year or that month or that day, or get a sense of, what was happening in the region and the environment.
Right.
As to stay in tune with the times, I always look back to history and respect history, and I'm always trying to look to the future, but we all live in the present. And the work comes out in different ways, in different languages, at different times. So rather than be exclusive to one voice or one particular body of work or whatever, as an artist, I think it's, from a personal development sensibility, you have to respect art in general and what it is and the rich history of art that we have in the region that goes back several hundred years, but also in the world. But also take responsibility for today and be a voice of today so that we can move forward and create our own histories.
All right, so that's a good kind of summary of perspective.
I don't know if that made sense at all. I'm just making it up as I go.
So one of the things that we want to plug is in the next edition of Plumage, Texas Magazine, we'll be featuring a curatorial essay on Russell's work for the Mindscapes exhibition, and also look for the history of this live Periscope interview, and also follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more information on Russell's exhibition here. So I think for those who don't have any more questions, we're going to go ahead and thank Russell for coming out today to the Mooney Galleries-Boerne. And again, we want to invite the public out to the opening of Mindscapes, which opens at 4 p.m. on second Saturday, June 13th, from 4 to 8 p.m. All right, we'll see you soon.
You didn't see the question I sent?